let it do its little negotiating with host. That's a reference from a movie. No, it's kind of like Independence Day. There we go.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, everybody settle in. We're going to start the kickoff here in just a moment.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, do we have time for a quick update from Time Ends? What have you been doing? You seem busy.
Yeah, other than working on the film with Christy, I'm also doing a pilot for Julianne, as well as wrapping up on Classic Rock Sandwich Shop, which has a surprise ending that I wasn't anticipating. Yeah, and then I don't know if you guys remember, I'm doing a feature for homeless individuals called Hidden Homeless, and I'm about to wrap up Principal in April. I have 3 more interviews and we're done, and we'll start editing. So that's exciting. That's pretty much it. Other than the podcast, I've been kind of busy. I have also a guest here, Ludovico, my editor. Instead of signing in, he's just sitting here. Say hi.
Welcome. Hello.
A sociable editor out and about in person. That's great.
Those don't exist. That's a myth. That's a myth.
Does he have a tan?
Yeah.
Because it's above the mask.
Yeah. Well, welcome, guys. Glad you're here with us tonight.
Thank you. I try to make the meetings as often as I can, but I'm always in the middle of some things because of this guy.
Yeah. That's good. Busy and occupied is good. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is our pre-meeting news section before we get to the main program at 6 o'clock. My name is Robin Martin. I'm the Vice President of SD Media Pros, and I'm glad to have you joining us tonight for a great discussion with some folks that have been in the industry, both creating content and helping others learn the craft, and we're going to hear more from them later. But first, it's always great to check in on what is the latest in our industry? What is some information that we can put to use? And for that, we always turn to Mark Maisonov for news you can use. Please take it away, Mark.
Thank you very much, Robin, for the great introduction. Yes, let's hope this is news you can use. At least that's the way it's labeled, and we will find out how much of it you can use at the end. So we'll go ahead and take off at the moment here with our news that you can use. We begin with something that some of you young'uns may not recognize, but this came from a program at the very beginning when Superman came out. And it was the great line that says, "Look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's..." Well, today it's a drone. And that's what we're looking at today, is the drone. And why? Because not long ago, the FAA launched these new rules for drones. And what they're mainly saying is it's kind of the first big set of changes since they decided that, yeah, we ought to get involved in this. It's part of the remote ID standard. And the biggest change is that effective in 2023 for drones weighing over 0.55 pounds or 0.25 kilograms, you must broadcast the location of both you and your drone. You and your drone, that's you, the pilot, with an ID number. So it can't just be the drone, it has to be, they have to know where you are. It doesn't have to come out all the time, but it has to somehow broadcast. And there's no grandfathering in this. So because you have the first drone ever made, you still have to have it wired out there somehow with this. So that's the important thing. It doesn't matter whether it's a racing drone, a little drone, or whatever. You still have to be able to do this. But how they're going to do it is still not exactly known. A lot of different styles and manufacturers of what to do to retrofit and the ones going forward. So something to be aware of. But the good news of this, and not that this isn't bad news, but the kind of the good news of this is that the new rules will allow you to fly over people. You can also fly at night, and in some cases over moving vehicles without having to apply for an exemption. Of course, you'll need to have a special training for the night flying, and there are drone categories that go into this, so you'll certainly want to look into that. So for more information, you'll want to visit this site. You can look at it up here. It's faa.gov news. And this will be on our media page as well for you to take a look at. Moving now to this fine picture. No, this is not the final battle on The Bachelor between Rachel and Michael as they woo Matt for that final rose. That's not what this is. No, this, ladies and gentlemen, is potentially the feel-good picture of the year. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'll tell you in just a minute. The movie-going confidence hits a highest level since the pandemic began, and national research groups been surveying moviegoers on a weekly basis since the pandemic began to sort of see how they feel. And Thursday of last week was a milestone day. It was the first time since the pandemic crippled the theatrical experience that people who felt very or somewhat okay about buying a ticket hit the record of 57%, which was identical to a year ago. So what does that have to do with Godzilla vs. Kong, which has yet to be released? Well, it's right now tracking to be the strongest opening of a movie during the pandemic at $20 million, which will outshine Wonder Woman 1984, which opened during the pandemic at $16.7 million over Christmas. So Godzilla vs. Kong could be that monster battle and everyone feels good about going back to the movies, so we're pulling for you. You know, you can pull for your hero of choice in that one. And now we go to power to the beeple. And what do I mean? What do I mean by power to the beeple? Well, I want you to sort of look at this. Just take a look at this image. Absorb it. Feel what it must be like to wrangle all those ones and zeros into this puny portrait gallery. Just take a look. And why? Because this particular gallery, along with a few others, sold by Beeple, a first purely digital work done with a unique NFT at Christie's for $69 million. Now, what's odd is that the guy, Mike Winkleman, who's the digital artist known as Beeple, hadn't sold anything for more than $100 until he did this. Now, last week at this NFT version of his work sold for the $69 million at Christie's. The sale positions him among the top 3 most valuable living artists, according to the auction house. Now, NFT is a non-fungible token, and it's a unique file that lives on a blockchain, kind of like Bitcoin, and they're able to verify ownership of the work of digital art. It is exceedingly difficult to explain, as if I knew what I was talking about. So you have to dive into it. It's really, really, really mind-blowing. But it's very interesting because the approach to creating and selling this digital art's really important for the thousands of artists who work in Hollywood. And what do I mean? Well, here's a quote from one of them. "We don't get royalties on any movie," says Star Wars and Black Panther concept artist David Levy, who has Vile Art is selling his personal digital art as NFTs. "If we stop work, we lose health insurance, we lose income. We never expected anything like this could happen, but now that it's here, we're not going to let it go." So if you want to know more about NFTs and how they work, there's a great article in Esquire, what NFTs are, or you can ring up DJ Summit at SummitWork, who knows all about this stuff, is selling things right now, and he may even speak to you unless one of his digital works sold recently for $70 million, in which case you may have to go to his private island and see if you can book a time with him there. It is springtime and spring fever, and it's just exciting. Everyone's getting out. Everybody wants to put their new clothes on, including our fine friends at some of our great editing houses. And what do I mean? Well, they have been releasing new things this spring. It's like a record pace, and everyone's trying to get into the action. So first up, with all these great little updates, we have Premiere Pro version 15, which dropped a couple weeks ago. And its main highlights here: it has an auto reframe for different viewing formats. It has captioning improvements and a soon-to-come transcription offering that is in there. And there's a scene edit detection. If you have say a commercial put in there and there's 10 or 12 edits in it, it can detect where those edits are and cut your video up accordingly. So that's a great little feature, plus a bunch of other things. So Premiere is on top of it with their release. Not to be outdone, Final Cut has recently dropped 10.552, I think is their recent one now. And some of the things that are in there now runs natively on the Apple Silicon, the Intel-based Mac computers. Has an automatic transcoding, so when you're copying or consolidating your media, so that's kind of a newer feature for them. And they also have a Smart Conform, which is just like the auto reframe in Final Cut Pro Speak. So it's a similar idea that will automatically take that cumbersome work out of for you to reframe, say, for your phone or an iPad or a square image. DaVinci Resolve has version 17 that has dropped recently, and that's got a fast review for quick media checking. It has a turbo mode for you to look through your footage very quickly. It has a disable timeline feature for improved performance. You turn off those timelines that may be loaded in, but you're not using. You turn that off and it can speed up the performance of DaVinci. And it has a render in place option where you can render your media and pop it right back in without having to drop it back in. So it's a neat little feature. And you know what? Heck, even Media Composer 2021.2 has released something here. And I can't tell you what it is because I no longer know what Media Composer does anymore. I think there's maybe 3 people left in town who cut on Media Composer. So that's where I are. But be aware that these are some of the great things that are coming down from our fine folks who are working with us in our edit programs. And finally, we have tremendous news for those who shoot in the woods. So what do I mean by that? Well, no fees now or permits are needed for shooting on national park lands. This came down January 22nd, U.S. District Court ruling. Determined that fees and permits on national park lands are unconstitutional. So what does this mean? Well, low impact filming will not require special use permit or fees. So low impact is defined as a crew of 5 or less and all gear is carried. So that's important. You can put your tripod on the ground and those things, but it generally has to be carried. You can't drive it in. So that's awesome. You can just go in and shoot. You don't have to have a permit. However, if you're a non-low impact filming activity, and you don't meet that low impact requirement, you will need a special use permit, and you have to do that at least 10 days in advance notice. Riding to the park you want to shoot at is required. So good news, Cleveland National Forest, Yosemite National Park, all these great national parks, you can just go shoot without having the hassle of that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is news you can use for March 24th, 2021.
Thank you so much, Mark.
You're very welcome.
Anybody have any comments or questions or follow up on any of those news items? Time ends. Raise a hand. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm actually curious about the forest filming. Is that, you said, I didn't catch all of it. You said only national forests, or every park?
According to the article, it's national park lands. So whatever the National Park Service owns and operates is under their jurisdiction. Doesn't count county parks or state, whatever their jurisdiction is different. National park lands.
Okay, just wanted to confirm. Thanks.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep, and it can be difficult sometimes to kind of understand those jurisdictions between national and state and stuff like that. But hey, for Yosemite, for Yellowstone, for all those big, Sequoia, all those, that's fantastic. Greg, you have your hand raised too. You're muted.
Yes, please clarify for me there, Craig.
Okay.
There we
Regarding
go.
the new drone rules, it's a very simple test to advance. If you're currently 107, which is the commercial license, if you it's a very simple test for renewal that begins in the middle of April, and there are a lot of really good test prep programs online. It's a really nice piece of advanced work, and one of the principal manufacturers, DJI, is already working on a retrofit program for those of us who have drones who don't yet have this tracking procedure. Nice. And as a drone operator, I think it's a great idea because you want to know who else is up in the air.
Right. It's a good call. Yeah, it's not a bad thing. I know there are people who like to fly anonymously, and how about the drone is flying over your backyard and you're going, who the heck is that? You might be able to figure that out.
Yeah. Yep.
I think I saw Dan Cheatham's hand. I don't know if you saw that, Robin.
Nope, I did not see it. It must have flashed by. Go for it, Dan.
Hi, just a quick question. That 10-day advance notice is to go to whom? And
it has to be in writing to the park in which you wish to shoot. So you'd have to contact, say, Yosemite. The ranger station usually is your best bet.
So their office.
Start from there. Yeah, I would start with the ranger station, yeah.
And we'll let folks know as well that the News You Can Use now has its own web page on our website, a blog. So after Mark supplies me with the slides and my PA moves here, we will get those posted so you can check out all the links and everything that Mark has mentioned tonight.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jeff. All right. So if we have maybe time for one more question, and then I think we'll move on to the next segment of the show here. Great. Not seeing any new hands. Let's move right along. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jane Hare, our president, to make some of initial announcements, comments, and tee up the rest of our program. Jane, over to you.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, everybody. I'm Jane Hare. I'm the president of SD Media Pros, and we are so happy to have you joining us tonight. I'm looking out the window. It's still light, which is different from our last few meetings. And how wonderful is that? We're glad you're taking a little bit of time out of your week to join us for this meeting. And tonight we are going to talk about the business of, I think we're a little bit early on my slides. And I'm seeing a typo in my slides. How delightful is that?
Go.
Tonight, we are going to be talking about the business of video training. And I know that I have taken a lot of trainings about video, as have many of you, and that I produce video about training, as many of you do. So I think this is going to be an interesting discussion with Steve Martin and Mark Spencer of Ripple Training. Robin, I'm not going to get to that for another minute. So can we go back to me, possibly? Thank you. That'd be great. I wanted to first introduce our board of directors, the team that keeps the wheels turning here for SD Media Pros. You've met Robin Martin, who is our VP. Our secretary position is currently open, and we're looking to fill that. We do have some people we're talking to, so that's excellent. But if you have interest and have not expressed it yet, about being on our board of directors, please send one of us an email, and you can contact us via the website. Bob Unger is our CFO. Jeff Trober is our webmaster. Kevin Marty is our expert at membership, all things membership. David Rains helps us with technology. Mark Masonov, as you just saw, is our specialist in everything news you can use. Tom Kinnaman is our past president and our streaming guru behind the scenes. And Michael Wood is in charge of all of our social media. And I really want to say how much I appreciate our board of directors. They are the ones who plan these meetings, who do everything that you see on the website and in the newsletter. And thank you very much. If you don't get our newsletter, I'd like to encourage you to sign up for that. Via our website. It always has details of upcoming meetings. And I even noted a few things from Mark's news you can use that maybe we'll plug in there next month with some additional details if possible. I do want to mention that we have a special event coming up. This is something brand new that SD Media Pros is going to try. We think it's going to be fabulous. And Bob Unger, I'm wondering if you can tell us about the event that's going to be happening on Wednesday, April 7th.
Well, many people here are technical geeks and we like gear, but then there are a lot of people that don't like gear. But for those that like gear, Sony is now coming out with the FX3. So we have scheduled a lunch and learn with Sony. So at noon, on April 7th, so you can just sort of sneak away and come see what's up. We'll have a presentation by Sony on the FX3, the FX6, the FX9, and then we'll have someone that's specifically talking about the new AI that goes into autofocus. So when you're working on a gimbal or something like that and you don't have somebody there tracking with you to do follow focus, how some of those new features can keep those shots intact. Followed by a bunch of Q&A. We will also collect questions ahead of time so you can have those answered as well. So the idea is that we can get some exposure to tech and not have to do it in a full day's program and sort of fill in some of the gaps between our regular meetings and presentations. So hopefully we can find a great deal of interest, and if so, we'll wind up with other vendors and other technical topics that we can fill in with a lunch and learn. Back to you.
Thank you, Bob. So that is meant to be about 1 hour starting at noon on Wednesday, April 7th. And we hope you'll join us for all of it or whatever part of it you can. We'll be sending out some details in an email about how to sign up and participate in that technical conversation. Now I want to turn it over to Jeff Trober for just a minute to tell us about the Wednesday, April 28th meeting.
Thank you, Jane. I'm excited about this meeting. We're going to go retro, very retro. And how many of you remember the old television show Family Ties? And the boyfriend, who was the artist that worked in Garbage, Scott Valentine, Nick was the name of the artist or the character, and Scott Valentine is the actor. And Scott is going to be coming on our meeting in April to talk about two things. He's going to talk a little bit about working in a Hollywood production. Family Ties was shot with a 4-camera set, so he's going to talk about the difference between that and working on single camera shoots, because he's also worked in movies and lots of television as well. And these days he is doing things a little different. He is an investment banker working behind the scenes, has done some production, and he's working on an OTT, over-the-top streaming network. He and his partners are working on that. That is hopefully to launch later this year. What is really interesting about his over-the-top network is that they're going to focus on independent filmmakers. As he says, he wants the film to be the star, not the network. So they'll be looking for content. So if you're an independent filmmaker, you're definitely going to want to tune in for this meeting, because it's going to be great. Scott is on fire about this. Talked to him week or so ago about all this, and he is just on fire and just excited about it. Sounds like a really great thing. So we hope you can join us to take a journey down memory lane and a look into the future as well. So that's on Wednesday, April 28th. Thanks, Jane.
Jeff, it sounds fabulous. And I don't know who actually raised their hand for having watched Family Ties. That was must-see TV with Michael J. Fox and Meredith Baxter Birney and Michael Gross. And Scott Valentine as Nick was really the comic relief. He was hysterically funny. So I think it's going to be fun to hear from him about the dynamics of working on the show with those actors, but then also just hearing about what it was like to do a 4-camera program at that time. Yeah. And then, of course, his new venture. So Wednesday, April 28th at the regular time. So we'll be sending out the information about that meeting as we usually do. So thanks, Jeff.
Sure. Thank you.
That up. I know you were able to pull from a personal connection there.
Yeah, so. Scott and I have known each other for a long time. So anyway, yes, he is. It was great to talk with him, and he's very excited about all this. So thank you.
Good. Thank you. All right. Let's talk about building your business and your visibility. We are introducing 2 new initiatives, and Robin, we can share your screen with what we're calling Just a Minute. And this is a new monthly feature that we're hoping to start next meeting, where we show your 1-minute videos with your favorite production tips and tricks. There's a lot of detail here on the screen. I'm not going to go through it all. The basic concept is you shoot a 1-minute video about something you are an expert at or have learned along the way. Shoot it on your mobile phone or on professional gear, as long as the quality reflects you as a media pro. And you may add a logo and your contact information at the end if you'd like. And then we are going to show those videos at our meetings and share them on social media. So it is a good way to build your profile locally. And speaking of profile, if we can go to the next slide, please. Another initiative that we are introducing is something called The Profiles. And this is a way for you to build your profile and visibility with other media professionals here in San Diego and elsewhere. We're going to send out a questionnaire via email. It's going to have some fun questions, and these are meant to be quick answers, 10 words or less. And then we are going to put those together with a photo that you submit and introduce those on our social media. And Robin, if you'll go to the next slide, this is just kind of a sneak peek at what this is going to look like. So the photos, we're going to kind of transition to kind of a blue opacity. And then you can see that some of the questions, my last purchase at B&H, were similar. And there's Robin's answer. Michael Woods, my first job in media was. Mark Masonov, an unexpected fact about me. You can, I can see for mine, I'm powered by our SDMP members. And Jeff Trober, I believe, has said creating a winning title for a short film. So the intent is to share about 6 to 10 facts about you. So we hope that you will watch your email for the profiles questionnaire and then fill that out. It will not take you a lot of time. Again, really 10-word answers is what we're looking for. So please join us in participating in the profiles and in our Just a Minute series. Let's move on. I think it's time to get to our program for tonight. Just a quick reminder that SD Media Pros is a nonprofit professional organization. Everything we're going to be talking about tonight is for educational purposes. And when we get to the Q&A, we want to try to avoid talking about things like AB5 and other legislation. Let's keep it to our training and video training topic, as always. And next, I'm going to introduce Tom Kinnaman. He is our past president, and he is our streaming technology guru, and he is the member of the board who planned tonight's event. So Tom, take it away, introduce our program and our speakers.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jane. It's always good to be able to reach out to the community and be able to pull from places where you've had success, where you've had connections in the past. And Ripple Training is one of those places and two of those people. So to give you a little bit of background on Ripple Training and who the guys are, here's the top of their webpage. They help people create better videos. You can see that they are expert trainers and they're focusing on Motion and DaVinci and Final Cut Pro, amongst the various other things that they do. And I just want to give a little background on the guys here while I navigate a little bit here. So here's Mr. Spencer. And here's, where are you here? Let's find you here. Where's Steve? And here's Steve. So there we go. The three of us should be up there all at once right now. So real quick, guys, I'm just going to read your bios, just so people know a little bit about you before we get going. Steve is the creative force behind Ripple Training, and he's been using Final Cut Pro since 1999. That's about when we all got started on it, right? So he uses it for production. He has introduced thousands of people to Final Cut Pro through his classes, workshops, and training products. He is also a consultant and is trained for Apple, Adobe, Disney, Canon, Walmart, and other companies. And he is also a writer and producer and photographer. And Mr. Spencer here, Mark, is a freelance producer, editor, motion graphic artist, trainer, and editor, writer based in the Bay Area. He produces tutorials and plugins based on Final Cut Pro 10, Motion, DaVinci Resolve for Ripple Training. His company, Day Street Productions, is a production and post-production studio focused on corporate training. He's also an author, and for 2 different books or maybe more. Mark, you can fill us in on that a little bit more, on Motion and Final Cut 10 with Peach Pit Press. Thank you and welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for having us.
So the basis of this, I think everybody wants to know where people got started. And that's kind of where I want to start off. You know, when you guys were young and restless and were looking for obviously we're all driven by this itch to scratch, to be in production. Otherwise we wouldn't be involved. And I definitely have learned there's definitely a cut of DNA for people that are involved. So Steve, let's start with you. How did you get started in the business of training?
Well, I thought about it and I actually created a short slideshow that's going to be much more interesting than just me talking about it.
Oh,
So if you wouldn't
that's
mind.
fun. There we go.
Yeah, I think it'll be better. So I'm going to share my screen here. And let's see here. There we go. It's Coffee with Steve and Mark.
There we go.
Actually, yeah.
That's a nice little apple there.
Yeah, well, my kids long since knocked that off the sink. So anyway, so as you mentioned, I started with Final Cut back in 1999 when it was introduced. And just a little background, that's the Final Cut Pro 1 box. When they brought it out, Apple kind of shocked the world. It was a sea change because prior to 1999, the cheapest nonlinear editing system you could buy was $30,000. That was a Media 100 and the Avid was $100,000. So Apple really created a category killer with this product. And it was just a box and a couple of CD-ROMs. And then there was a convergence of things happening because at the same time, Apple introduced the G3 Macintosh that allowed you to connect a FireWire-based video camera directly to the Mac. And some of you who've been around a while are very familiar with that camera. That was the first digital video camera. It was a DV camera. You connected and you can literally suck in video that was digital from tape right into your G3 and edit it digitally in Final Cut Pro and spit it back out. It was huge. I can't even tell you how big it was. In fact, so big and that I was doing classes in Santa Monica and at standing room only, 200 people in a classroom. It was so popular. So that kind of got us thinking, well, I was traveling around the country teaching Final Cut in New York, Chicago, everywhere. And it got old really fast traveling. So the genesis of Ripple Training was I've got to find a way to deliver this content in a more efficient manner. And the internet really wasn't a thing in 1999. It was just starting. It was burgeoning. So how can I do this? And I started, even with low quality QuickTime movies, start putting stuff up. And so that's how it started. So the early days, as it were, I worked for a reseller in the San Fernando Valley, and name was Intelligent Media. Some of you may know this guy sold a lot of hardware, and he did systems integration. And I look like 10 years old in that picture. Anyway, we did the very first radio broadcast called DV Guys, and we were doing streaming using QuickTime and talking about digital video. And then I did the very first. This is my first foray into professional training. I did a 8 VHS series called Final Cut Pro A to Z, and we released that. That was a lot of fun, and people bought a set, and we used to sell them at NAB, and that's how I introduced a lot of people to Final Cut Pro is through my VHS training. So in terms of this is where kind of Mark and I started converging our paths. How I got my start. There was one question you asked, Tom, about what was your kind of breakthrough or breakout moment?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody has to show favor at some point to help people get down the road.
Well, it was kind of a happy accident because it's really interesting because I went to film school in Los Angeles. I worked for an advertising company, but it's really weird because my passion was for teaching stuff. I liked taking the cookies from the top shelf and bringing them down to the bottom shelf. That was fun for me. And so one year I was at the DV Expo in Long Beach and I was teaching, just like here, I had a bunch of computers and I was talking and someone from Apple came up and she was like, oh my gosh, we got to get you in front of more people. And so this person from Apple got me involved with the Apple Certified Training Program. And I started working on books and teaching essentially training Final Cut instructors to go all over the world and deliver certified training. And Mark and I have more to say on that later because that program is basically dead. And we'll explain why in a moment. But that's how we started. Mark was writing the books and then we were invited to teach at these shows. Like the big one was NAB. And this is literally Apple's classroom at NAB. And that's me about, 15 years ago. And this is where I met Mark. Mark was doing motion and he was also one of the trainers that was invited by Apple to speak at their booth. And so we kind of got together about 15 years. I think it's 15 years now, Mark, I don't remember, but it's been a long time. We said we should get together and do training. I don't know if you remember. Yeah. So we met here at NAB doing this. And then after NAB, we got together and we strategized about, okay, what can we do next? And we started then cranking out training on CD-ROM. And course, Final Cut Pro is huge. That's the creator of Final Cut. It's Randy Ubilos, who no longer works at Apple, but he's the one who came up with the whole, skimming and, magnetic timeline. Regardless of what you think about it, I mean, he made something very unique. And then from there, Mark and I kind of branched out into doing a lot of first podcasts. We did a lot of podcasts with Alex Lindsay. We'd go up to San Francisco and record video podcasts, and we put them up, and every week they'd be put up. But then YouTube started eclipsing that, and we're like, well, we should just be doing them directly to YouTube. I'm giving you kind of a truncated, timeline here, but Mark and I have been doing pretty much focused on producing content for YouTube. We started seriously about 5 years ago, and just like 1 to 2 videos a week. And we're up to, as of about 5 days ago, we just hit 80,000 subscribers. So it's been quite the ride for sure. But so we have the YouTube channel, and we're putting content up there weekly. Mark just posted an excellent video. You got to check it out. I'm working with ProRes RAW, the Sony A7S, and the Atomos digital recorder and Final Cut, and he brings it all together in a really nice small footprint 37-minute tutorial. It's on our YouTube channel right now.
I got that on my email today or yesterday. Yeah.
So what you're looking at is kind of this is when we're not creating tutorials and plugins, we're spending a lot of time building our YouTube channel, which is where we find a lot of our customers, honestly, because more people go to YouTube than any other site. So here's a little bit of level training. We have developers, a couple of developers that work for us, and we have full-time editor, and my wife does all of the bookkeeping, and she does all the marketing. And so we're a small company, small footprint. We moved from Los Angeles about 10 years ago, moved out to Arizona, out in the middle of nowhere, and you can see the picture on the left. So we just decided, I don't need to be anywhere specific, so why don't I move somewhere where I can have a horse? So that's what we did. We moved to a place where I had like 5 horses. And by the way, we got rid of them because I have a saying, and the day you sell a horse is the day you give yourself a raise. So we lived out there, and that was great. And that's a picture of NAB about 5-6 years ago. And that's our plan. And as you mentioned at the start of this, our introduction, these are the 3 pieces of software that we are primarily focused on: Final Cut Pro, Motion, and DaVinci Resolve. And that's just the area that we focused on. And we kind of decided not to do the Adobe, not that, it's a bad product or anything, but we just found that these are the apps that we wanted to focus on. See if there's, 2 more slides. I want to kind of back up just a little bit. Mark and I are both creators. We're producers. We love filming. We love creating things. We don't consider ourselves, we train for sure, but I think our first love is storytelling, just like you guys. I've shot a number of documentaries. Mark shoots all kinds of amazing stuff. I'm a huge avid underwater video guy. I love to shoot underwater video. So the training thing is great, but what we really like to do is go out and create content. So there's some of the projects that Mark and I have worked on together. And I just throw that up there, on our site. If you're interested in any Resolve training or Final Cut or any of the plugins, I put that code up there for you in case anyone wants to take advantage of it. So I'm going to stop sharing. Yeah.
Well, Mark, I thought you were the talkative one. Yeah, I thought that's the way it was all along, but maybe not.
Oh, I can go.
Okay. Maybe you can follow up with that one a little bit. Give us a little more personal point of view on why don't you start where Steve did there a little bit? You guys met at NAB.
I'll back up just a little before that in terms of how we ended up coming together, because it's really kind of interesting how that happened. Because in 1999, when he started his story there, I was the CFO of a software company in San Francisco, and Final Cut Pro had just come out, and I liked my job okay, but I wasn't really passionate about it. I was really interested in filmmaking, but had always found it very intimidating. I bunch of photography and writing. And when Final Cut came out, I was like, this is something I can do. So that blue G3 that he showed, I bought one of those. I got Final Cut. I got a little Canon Elora camera. And while I was still working full time, I would shoot anything I could. I'd go shoot a wedding, just shoot anything to get material to work with. And even at work, I'd be on, you guys might know Creative Cow, anybody? Yeah, so I was on the Creative Cow forums all the time, devouring stuff. There's a wonderful gentleman who's since passed away named Ralph Fairweather, who used to be one of the biggest contributors to Final Cut there. I learned a ton from him and ended up actually meeting him and getting to work with him later. But so I was kind of doing all this on the side. And we had I mean, this is so cool. I've been watching you guys, today do all your stuff, and it's just really great to see. And like, it reminds me, because in San Francisco, the very first Final Cut Pro users group started in San Francisco by Kevin Monahan and it was Sharon Franklin and Lisa Siebold, right when Final Cut Pro originally came out, like in '99. And I started going to those meetings, and it was this great community. And I spent my weekends squirreled away trying to learn everything. And I started really with After Effects before Motion came out. I learned After Effects, and I made a little crazy thing, and I showed it at one of those things. And Sharon saw it, and she mentioned me to an editor at Peach Pit, who asked if I wanted to do a book on Motion when Motion just came out. So that was, in terms of the big breaks, that was a really big break for me, is just by being passionately involved and interested in something and just putting myself out there. I got this opportunity to write the Peach Pit Visual Quick Start Guide, which is like a 500-page book on Motion when it first came out.
You were what, 15 then? I mean,
yeah, not exactly. But that got it started. So I did that book, and I started writing for some other publications. And I don't know the whole timing of everything, but about 2005, I don't know how I got into NAB and working on the show floor. I think it was the same person, Steve mentioned it, at Apple. I was helping out in the NAB showroom floor. They had an educational open pit with 30 machines, and they'd have people come in and do quick sessions. And I was one of the people who would help you learn how to use your mouse or whatever, just do whatever. And I remember to this day, I was in the back behind the stage, and Steve was back in there in this little dark room where you're preparing. And I think Sharon Franklin was actually there trying to get some After Effects thing to work. And I started talking to Steve, and he's like, "Oh, I do this training company." I'm like, "Oh, I do this motion." It's like, "Oh, we should," that's where it all kind of came together right then. It's kind of the starting point of that whole process when we met there. And then, Steve kind of laid out the history from that point on, how that kind of thing developed.
Well, you guys have formed an excellent team. Mark, you're not swayed to buy a horse and move to Arizona?
No, I've been to Arizona and visited Steve there many times. In fact, Steve used to have an entire green screen studio in a separate barn, basically. It was delivered to his house, and he had it as a separate unit there at his previous house. And he like had my microphone suddenly appears. Boom. Yeah, I'd go up there and we shoot a bunch of episodes there at the ranch. But yeah, I'm not a big horse person. It's too much responsibility. I have a dog, and it drives me crazy.
Back on topic a little bit. So you guys are certified by Apple. I mean, how did that all happen? Steve?
Well, at one point, we were the driving force between, driving the certified program. There was a book, Mark referred to it, he wrote a book. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we take the book as a basis for teaching other instructors, and they'd have to take an exam and they'd have to pass it and then become certified in that and delivering that particular.
So you helped. It's not working with the virtual.
Yeah.
So you helped develop the curriculum for other people to become certified.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we did for a good chunk of our time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's
And
amazing.
then, go ahead.
So if somebody wants to become certified, if they have that teaching bug inside them, what would be a good path for them to get to that level where they can create their own clientele?
I'll let you answer that one, Mark.
I would say that there is no path. And I mean, the fact is that certification is not mean what it used to. It used to be, it's the same way books don't, the cycle of making a book is like a year, and the cycle of software is like a month, and they don't mesh together. And the same thing with certification. There's just not, there's no longer, there might be some certification program out there anymore. I wouldn't put any weight on that whatsoever. The way everybody learns right now is by what we do. They watch a bunch of YouTube videos, and sometimes they get frustrated and like, actually, I need a structured approach, and they'll buy a tutorial and be like, oh, I can learn all this in a day instead of, trying to piecemeal it together. But there's really no certification process for Final Cut Pro right now that I would recommend that would help you in a career.
That's interesting, because in my longevity, moving from a linear editor to, I pretty much jumped on the Final Cut Pro wagon when 3, and then they went from 5 to 4, 5, 6 real fast. And that's kind of when I said, okay, I can edit on this, because I was a traditional linear editor for 10, 15 years before that came on. So maybe this is a good time. I have a poll, and this is I'm going to launch this for everybody. So everybody, all right, where is it? Why won't it launch? Okay. Let me go. Oh, I've lost total control. All right, everybody's locked. My screen is, I can't get out of my view. What happened?
That's all right. You look calm and cool and collected, so don't
My
sweat it.
poll will not launch. I probably, because I have, let's click off and click back on. Well, on that note, seeing how it won't launch, maybe we'll just, let me add, I have lost control.
Tom, do you want to do it the old-fashioned way? We could read off the question and do a show of hands.
Well, I can't get back to gallery view.
Jeff Trober's showing as the co-host. He might be able to do it for you.
Is that Bill Davis? Hey, Bill Davis.
Hey, hi, Stephen. Good to see you.
Robin, you want to
Every
check it?
every time I turn my computer, there's Bill Davis.
Co-host,
like
can you
everywhere.
get in there and unspotlight? Oh, maybe I need to do.
Let me remove spotlights here real quick for you.
Go to gallery view.
I'm on gallery view. I'm not driving. That's on your side. You're still host, so you should be able to.
I can't see the gallery.
Okay.
You can see it?
Yep.
I can't get it to gallery view. My
You may be locked out because you're in recording mode.
I just put up the poll.
Oh, there you go.
You did? It
says. Oh wait. Let me. It says launch poll. Here, I'll launch it.
Maybe because I gave you guys control.
There it is. Poll's running.
Okay. Thanks, but okay, we'll just. There were 5 together, and it's the 5th one that we wanted to do. Maybe because I'm recording. Sorry, guys. This is.
I think we can just kind of talk through some of the stuff and go from there.
Yeah.
So it's probably about enough time on that first poll, Jeff, so you can close it out and show those results back. Perfect.
Okay, that part's.
And I couldn't vote in that one. I'm a Final Cut 10 user who run the local users group. I'm one of the few people who certified back the last time you could take a test.
Okay.
10.2, 10.3.
Nice.
Cool. So we got a good representation of some Final Cut folks, some Premiere folks, and a couple of Resolve folks in the mix too, which is great.
There you go.
Do you want to queue up the next, Tom, or should we just kind of?
I have lost total control.
Okay. Then let's just
something's
move along.
gone wrong. I can't get it into gallery view. Yeah. This is a first. Maybe because I did spotlight myself.
Yeah.
Do you have the polling icon, Robin, or should I go ahead and click the poll?
If you have those and want to drive those, that's fine.
Okay.
I think let's just kind of talk through them. Okay, so let's just do some quick shows of hands, because a lot of these other ones that we wanted to kind of get the conversation started, just for folks to kind of volunteer a little bit of their sort of whether they've used training products, what their disposition is, to help kind of Mark and Steve understand who the audience is here a little bit. So a show of hands, or up, down, using your reaction tools on whether you've ever purchased any sort of like online training for video production software, etc. Seeing lots of thumbs up. Yep. Awesome. Pretty solid mix there. Thanks, everyone. Next one. Anybody, now this is probably it's going to be a very different question given the last year or so, but ever purchased or attended any in-person training in the before times? Yeah, tons and tons and tons. And then last one, anybody who here purchases plugins or templates on a regular basis for their work, or just for fun to learn? Some hands, quite a few. Good. So it sounds like a lot of folks have pretty good familiarity with these tools that we're talking about. What I was hoping to do with the rest of the program is we definitely want this to be conversational and give all of the participants here a chance to ask questions, but I have a few sort of queued up to kind of get the wheels turning a bit, hopefully with some interesting topics, and dive maybe a little bit deeper on some of the stuff that Steve and Mark, you guys talked about. So with that, I'm just going to start asking some questions. And then Jeff and David, help me keep an eye on the chat, and if anything pops up there, feel free to toss them out, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Robin.
Yeah,
one last technical issue. I'm now looking like I'm just a participant. I don't have any control. So something happened between the sharing between the two of you guys.
Yeah,
my poll is still up. I can't take it down.
You still see as a host on our side. I think we'll just drive it from here, Tom. And
yeah, that's fine. Okay. I just have a poll sitting in the middle of my screen. Does everybody else?
Don't believe so. You should be able to click the little box and close out of that, Tom, hopefully. Or you're just frozen up and you just need to write it out as best you can.
All right, fair enough.
So going back, Steve and Mark, to sort of that first process you referenced, making, VHS tapes and all that. Paint a picture a bit of what was the production process for creating online training videos back at that time.
Back in the day?
Yeah.
Well, there was very few tools to actually capture the screen back then. I can't remember what I was using, but the tapes were really just, I took 2 Beta SP cameras. Remember Beta SP? Anybody?
Absolutely.
Beta SP. Yeah, so
1 inch,
Beta SP. Hey, I think, yeah, Beta should have won the consumer videotape wars, but there you go. So I had a camera, Beta SP on me, and Beta SP on my screen. So really, we filmed the screen, make sure the refresh rate was great. And then I brought it into a linear edit bay, Tom. I brought it I cut it on a Grass Valley 200 sweatshirt to a D2 machine. That's how I cut it.
I love D2.
So I output it on D2 as a master, and then I sent it out to be duplicated on VHS. And that's what I did. And then the online part, as the tools started developing for capturing, the quality wasn't good because the codecs aren't to where they are today. We don't have H.264 and H.265. We have the codecs back there. I even remember the Sorensen video or there's some other codecs that were really bad, but that's what we used. And so so we would we'd upload those, and remember the QuickTime nothing was streamed. You'd put it up and they'd have to buffer enough to the computer to watch it. You recall those days? So you'd embed you'd use an embed tag. You'd embed the movie, they'd load it, and then it would start buffering how many frames, and then they could play. So that was what we did. And then at some point, we'd use that to preview our tutorials, but then we'd ship them a physical DVD. And then ultimately, we ended up with an online model. We actually built up our own proprietary player to deliver content, streaming it at HD with chapter markers. You can make notes. So we've evolved quite a bit because the tools are now there. So that's really the kind of the trajectory.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And you're not dealing with delivering physical, copies of anything anymore. It's just bits,
actually, it's not true. Because some people, and somebody way out in the still wants a USB, so we'll ship them a USB with all their stuff on it.
Yeah.
But no optical media anymore.
Yeah. Not burning a Gold Master disc and doing that whole bit. So,
it's funny. We still refer to Master. We still refer to it as GM, even though nothing's put on a disc anymore.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I was curious, you guys touched on sort of a lot on the video production side and on the training side. How about on the plugin development side? I'm curious how you guys sort of saw a niche there and decided to tackle that and what it was like. So Mark, if you want to take the lead on that.
Sure. I think the way that started is I was being pursued for a while by FX Factory, which you may know is it's basically like an app store for plugins. It's a platform for delivering plugins. And they were kind of constantly saying, you should do something. It's an early market. And I'm like, I have my hands full. I just, but I was doing so much stuff in motion. And I was like, I bet I could actually make something in motion because I'm not a developer. I don't code. I don't, I'm not real technical, but I know motion really well. And so I started messing around and I kind of developed something I thought would be kind of cool. And one time Steve was over, I don't know why you were here in San Francisco, Steve. I think it was in San Francisco at the time. And I showed him, and I was like, hey, look, I'm messing around with this thing. I don't really know what to call it though. And he's like, oh, those are call outs. And it's like, oh, you're right. They're call outs. Hey, you want to like do this together? It's like, yeah, let's do it together. So, I mean, that was our first plugin product was Ripple callouts. And it was very successful. And it sort of launched like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like here's something that's different than tutorials because tutorials kind of have a life at like big up front and then, tails off and kind of keeps going for a while. But then the new rev comes out and you need to update it. And, tutorials are great and we've built a living on them. But this was like another thing to do that had a different model to it. And it was different thinking. Steve really loved doing the marketing and playing with him and telling me like he was great feedback of how to improve it and how to, I get in the weeds and the details of all the trying to make stuff work. And then he's able to stand back and just like, well, wait, nobody's going to understand that. Or maybe you could do this. So we worked together really well and still do because that led to multiple plugins on that platform with FX Factory. But then we started actually over 2 years ago now, just about exactly 2 years ago, doing some of our own Ripple Live plugins because we started this Ripple Live show. And then we started doing the Ripple Live plugins that are a different type of plugin. They're a smaller bundle, a little lower cost to do some directly quick things. So we have these sort of two different sets of plugins. But it's been a great fun business to do in conjunction with all the Final Cut Motion and Resolve training. And a lot of the ideas come from, I don't know where they came from those days, but today, there's so much, Facebook gives me so much information about what people want and what they were having trouble with for tutorials, for plugins, for our quick tips, for anything. There's just so many people posting, how do I do this? How do I do that? And like, oh, hey, I got an idea. So it kind of started from there, from just messing around with motion and seeing what's possible. And then we've been doing those for altogether, we've at least 10 years of plugins now.
Yeah, and also too with the plugins, one of the things that drives us is like, I want to do a plugin that I would use. Like, so Mark developed a plugin called Punch-ins, where you could, if you had a 1080 timeline, you just drop this little title over it. It'll punch in 4 times and punch out, kind of like what you see on YouTube videos all the time. And we were always using keyframes to do that. And now you just drop this thing on there, punches in, punches out, and we added arrows. And it's like, I use that thing constantly. So we make plugins that we use all the time. I mean, I came up with a plugin idea like for keyboard shortcuts that just pop out. Now, it's not a hugely, not everyone needs to have like keyboard shortcuts but show up on the screen. But for me, to be able to just quickly create a plugin that I could just put any keyboard from the Mac on the screen, that was huge. So really it's about finding ways that save us time, and then that kind of creates the idea.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's having that sort of entrepreneurial mindset where you're solving your own problems, but saying, hey, this could be useful for others. We could make this a product, whether for free to give it away to get people interested in our other stuff, or for sale, because I've seen you guys do that regularly. And also for folks who are, maybe have clients that they want to help develop YouTube videos for. That's all, great examples of, helping clients that we're working with think about what are they producing, what are they making that could be a product, on its own in some sort of video format. I'm curious with, that, 10 million views at this point that you guys are just about up to on YouTube, and, over 800 videos and 80,000 subscribers. That's quite a feat of just consistency in terms of production and turning out the content. And I think you kind of alluded to it earlier, just how that fits into your business model, but also kind of who you guys are, your passions as just being educators and wanting to take those cookies down from the top shelf and get them down to more people. I'm curious sort of what you've learned from creating that much content that consistently over the years in terms of your production processes and your approaches to kind of keeping up with the changes to a platform like YouTube.
Mark, do you want to answer that one first? I have my own answer for that.
Just one example that I'm thinking of is we launched, Steve had this idea, maybe a year ago at the most, of doing these 60-second quick tips in addition to our regular MacBreak Studio that, can be 10, 15 minutes long, or the one I just did yesterday is almost 40 minutes long, but just sort of like everybody's attention span is getting smaller and smaller, right? It's not a good thing, but take advantage of it. Like we do these 60-second quick tip things, and they've proved to be really popular. And one thing I love about doing them is it forces me to figure out how to communicate something in less than 60 seconds. And sometimes I push it too hard, like it's 60 seconds, but people are like, what just happened? Like I got to watch it a few times, but it's a really great exercise in editing and just editing script, because everything we do starts with writing. Like I would really characterize myself as a writer and a teacher more than a video person. I mean, like Steve, I love teaching. It's what really motivates me, but it all starts from writing. And these 60-second things start from how can you write it in a compact way that communicates just what you need to communicate. And to me, that's been a really useful exercise. And then the editing comes like, okay, how do we trim it down and save a few seconds? But the writing has to start out being exactly right for everything else to go. So, I mean, just an example of something, but Steve can talk, like we have to produce so much content so regularly that there's some things you just kind of have to develop some discipline around, like what's it? Perfect is the enemy of good. Like, at some point you got to get it done and get it out because you've got 10 more things to do. So it's challenging, but you want to keep the quality. It's a real thing. You want to keep the quality up and you need to get it done. So it's tough. I don't know if you have a comment on that, Steve.
Well, it's that, age-old triangle, good, fast, cheap, pick two, right? So we tried to make them good and fast, right? But they're also cheap because they're free. The thing is what I've learned most about you doing these YouTube videos is that the production value has to be there. I mean, you could throw stuff up and, with with your iPhone or a GoPro, whatever. And if the content's good, people watch it. I think ultimately, I mean, you have guys just talking to camera and they've, 200,000 subscribers. So the content has got to be good. It's got to be content that people are interested in. But it's interesting in our business, we're not, we're not like a talking head where we're talking about the news, or whatever. We're filmmakers or storytellers. So we have to think in terms of sequencing and shots and graphics, and that takes a lot of time. I mean, Mark will tell you that the thing he just did, took pretty much all week or longer to do. And And you almost have to compete now with the other YouTube channels, because we're competing with the likes of, a Gerald and Dunn or a Potato Jet or an iJustine, or a lot of these YouTubers where you watch and they got very high production value. So that's kind of expected now. That's like the minimum bar, is your stuff has to sound good, it's got to look good, and you got to be able to tell a story. And that's what's challenging, is doing it consistently 1 to 2 or 3 times a week. And quite frankly, sometimes it gets exhausting and you want to get off the hamster wheel, but there's no way out of it. You've got to continue to feed. I call it feeding the algorithm, YouTube's looking for that, the engagement, the comments, it's all about what YouTube wants to recommend to people. And that takes a huge commitment. I'm just saying, I'm telling you, if you want to do a YouTube channel, do it. But it is don't fool yourself. It's a huge time commitment. It took literally almost 4 solid years to get to 80,000 subscribers. I mean, and posting at least 2 videos a week.
Well, and that started, that wasn't 4 years that was 4 years after building a user base for many years before that. I do want to mention one other thing that for me makes this possible, because if I were, a lot of these YouTubers are solo people doing their own thing, and they may have help around them, but it's their thing. And I would not be able to do that. The fact that Steve and I do this together, and we haven't been physically together for a long time now, partly because of the pandemic and partly because we're able to do stuff remotely so much easier. But the fact that we started out doing this together and as a duo, and we push each other, and we support each other, and like, oh, you're burned out, take a day off. Like, I'll pick that up. Or like, this could actually be better. Like every time I send something to Steve, I post it for review, I get a sick sense in my stomach. Cause like, I don't want cause I know the first thing he's going to say, he's going to have some complaint about it. Oh, this sucks. Oh, that sucks. And I'll get really angry. And like, what do you mean? Because we use like Frame.io for all of our comments and stuff. And he'll like, I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to see him. I'll read it and I'll get really mad. And then I'll settle down. And it's like, yeah, okay, you're right. I'll fix it. And I couldn't do that with myself. I wouldn't have the ability to do that kind of self-censoring and self-pushing kind of thing. So I think having somebody that you can work with in that respect is really helpful.
Yeah. I heard a couple key things there that would be super relevant for our group. Is having folks that you trust for feedback, for the really, really honest, direct feedback that you can take to heart and work with. And then also, I think if I could paraphrase what Steve said about being committed to the YouTube channel, it's like, do it or don't. There's no sort of doing it halfway, because if you don't, you'll never really get the algorithm will not pick you up unless you are being consistent, or you're really successful at kind of partnering with some of those other YouTubers that you mentioned. And I mean, you mentioned Gerald Undone in your ProRes Raw video, Mark. So it's like you're pointing to those communities, because it's also a community of makers and collaborators too. So it's not necessarily competition. There's an opportunity to kind of grow together there too. I would
big
say.
Time. I mean, that's why, like, we had actually known Justine from years ago through Alex Lindsay. We were both in his studio shooting something way before she was big news, and didn't know her really well, but had met her. And then we reached out to her a couple of years ago. Hey, we know you're using Final Cut. You think about doing something together? And she was fantastic. And so that's, we have this iJustine teaches Final Cut on the App Store. That's been a great thing and a great collaboration with her. So, we love building those relationships. It's really the way to go. Is everybody out here can push us to be better when they're competitors, and they can also be great to work with.
Yep. Kind of continuing along that same vein, and some of the questions that I'm seeing here. Do you have any metrics or sort of ballpark info that you'd be willing to share, just as sort of a baseline for folks here, in terms of, how many views does it take to get a sale of, a training program or a plugin or something like that? What is the sort of, not necessarily monetizing directly on YouTube and doing that ad stuff, although I saw you're doing super chats on your live streams and things like that, so you are doing some kind of community donation stuff, but sort of, what are you guys seeing the effectiveness of kind of YouTube driving folks to your products?
Well, I think it's a huge driver of sales to our site. And really what you're doing with YouTube, any business that's built on trust. And so if they trust you, if they trust that you're delivering information they can use and you're helping them, then they're much more willing to say, you know what, I really want to sample their bigger. I get emails all the time. You really helped me with this, and I decided to give you buy one of your tutorials, and it's great. So it's really a philosophy I have about really how the universe works. It's like you give and it comes back to you. A lot of people say, you're giving all this free content. Yeah, but that's who I am. I'm a giver. And I don't worry that it's going to come back or not come back, because I just give and it just does. And so YouTube really has kind of been a platform for not so much getting paid by Google. I mean, we do make money off our channel, but it's fine, but it's not nothing. We couldn't make a living off of it. That's not the point of it. The point is to make people aware of what we are, what we offer, and to drive them to our website where they can, buy the full training.
Oh, that's great. Let's talk a little bit, speaking of sort of the hamster wheel and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
keeping current with, like you said, the software cycle is super short these days. It's, there's new revisions happening all the time, maybe a little slower on the Final Cut side as a user than I would prefer these days, but there's constantly, a churn there. So what is your sort of approach, because you guys have been very fast in terms of turning around updates when stuff comes out? How do you sort of gear up for that? Because I know we have a lot of folks here in town that, for instance, they work with some of the big tech companies and they are working on NDA product releases for CES, and they maybe have a 1 week or 2 week to like get into the lab and shoot something and turn around a video and get it ready for the show floor. How do you guys sort of gear up or approach when you've got a big release coming up that you need to deliver content for?
Mark, you want to answer that one?
Without getting into any NDA territory or anything along those lines.
Of course, we can't really, there's some stuff we can't really go into a lot of detail about. But I mean, basically it's just, we're at the whim of the companies for whom we create products for, and we can't do anything about that. So when things drop, we hustle. Yeah. And it could be, Apple does something the same time as Blackmagic does, and then we're in a crunch, and we ramp up extra help when we need to get it. It's all hands on deck and just like crazy. I mean, I'm personally on a huge backlog right now because I've got a massive DaVinci Resolve advanced color correction update that I'm working on. That's huge. It's a 6-hour tutorial. It's 60 lessons. It's 60 lessons, wow. And it has to be completely redone because the interface looks a little different. And people are like, well, wait a minute, that button isn't in there in the current version. So you have to like reshoot the entire thing, even though maybe 20% of it's actually new material. I don't know how to answer the question, because you just have to hustle as best you can to make it happen. It's just like any freelancer, it's boom or bust. You're either like totally overwhelmed or you're destitute, and it's very hard to smooth things out and do the work when you want to.
I'm curious, maybe a better way to kind of come at it is, have you guys developed any sort of approaches using metadata or tagging or anything of those things? Because that's a great feature in Final Cut in the browser to help you when you do have to go back and make revisions. Is there anything that you guys have learned as something, a lesson along the way to help you then when you have to go back and revise, or is it just hustle when the time comes and crank it out?
Well, we both have our core competence. I mean, we're both editors, we're both storytellers, and usually it's a divide and conquer scenario if we're working on a tutorial. As Mark mentioned, we utilize Frame.io quite extensively. I can't even imagine doing what we do now without Frame.io. It's just so helpful. I mean, I use it every day. And Mark and I, we post, he'll post an edit and he'll send me an XML of his timeline, and I'll open it up. Boom, there's his edit. I make changes. I export an XML. Boom. This, of course, assumes we have the same media on our respective systems. But assuming we do, and even now, it's really great with Final Cut's proxy workflow. We don't even have to upload, huge ProRes files. We get out, quarter size H.264 movies which Final Cut plays back just fine. And then we relink to the optimized media later, or the original media later. So we're not hindered in any way now, even on big projects, because we can literally upload hundreds of H.264 clips or HEVC clips or what have you, small footprint files, work with them. We both have them, and we're just swapping XMLs, and it works out really, really well. And we also use, what we like, I use the Final Cut's marker feature a lot. I'll put markers with comments. And so he'll open up and see comments, everything I need to change, or he uses it right there in the timeline. All right, and just go through and check things off. So works really well.
Nice. Yeah, the remote collaborative workflows these days with tools like Frame.io or Whipster or what have you are fantastic. And even the direct integration into the panels in Premiere and Final Cut really kind of facilitate that kind of behavior. So it sounds like not so much preparing and trying to kind of minimize the amount of work, but just get better at doing the work faster when it comes is probably the lesson. That's great. So we've talked a lot about software and editing, but I know you guys have also kind of dipped a toe into some other production topics as well. You've done some tutorials, especially around some of the hardware tools like the Blackmagic A10 Minis, mobile, audio and video development. Yeah, was that one of the mini Ripple?
It's a speed editor from Blackmagic.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys have diversified. So it's not just software training; it's also some kind of production tips and hardware tutorials. How do you guys decide which of those to focus on? Is it just things that are interesting to you, or that you're actually using, or that you see maybe a niche in the market that folks aren't talking about? How do you go about that?
Well, that poll that you showed was huge to me. I already looked at it, I go, those numbers are great. DaVinci is down here. That means that there's this huge growth potential for DaVinci. We're hearing more and more people, really interesting. Blackmagic's doing some great things. So I look at it, I go, oh, there's a whole bunch of people that still need to learn how DaVinci and see how awesome it is to do some stuff. So in terms of like what we pick to focus on, Mark said it earlier, you read Facebook, we watch a ton of videos, tons of them. And I look at like metrics, like whose video is being watched and why. And I don't want to copy that, but maybe we can have our own unique take on that. And then we're going to, so in a way we're kind of piggybacking on the popularity of the particular subject. I mean, look, there've been videos done on ProRes RAW, to be sure. I mean, Gerald Dunn has done them, and the DP Journey has done them, but we have our own take on it. So that Mark did in collaboration with Atomos, they decided to do our unique thing. So it just made sense. He has all the hardware and he has a passion to talk about it. So why not do that subject? So it's just kind of an organic approach to our subject matter. Like another good example was Apple came out with the iPhone 12 with HDR. Nobody understood, like, what's going on with the Dolby? How come when I put the clip in my timeline, it's all washed out? What the heck? So I look at that and I go, Mark, there's an opportunity. We need to educate people. So I didn't even have an iPhone 12 at the time, and Mark was in Belize. He didn't have one. So we contacted Justine, say, Justine, send us, because she already did a video on the iPhone 12, like before it even came out. Anyway, so send us some clips. So we took all of our clips and then we presented how to work with HDR clips in Final Cut. So there's another perfect example of how we would choose a subject.
But it has to be stuff that we're really interested in. I mean, I would not do a review of a piece of hardware or software if I wasn't excited about it. It wouldn't come through. Like this whole this Ninja and the A7S III. I love this gear. It's just really exciting to me. So I'm totally love talking about it. I wouldn't. So what we don't do a lot of is like, some YouTubers are all focused on, hey, somebody sent me all this stuff and I'm going to tell you about it and then I'm going to send it back. Like we don't do that. Like we talk about stuff that we use and that we actually do and are excited about. We aren't reviewers. It's sort of like, here's stuff that we use and here's what we do and here's our workflow.
Yeah, I'm curious as well if maybe you've seen that same shift in your customers as I think we're all experiencing as individuals in the industry, where folks are expected to, if they were strictly editors or motion graphics folks before, they're expected to know a little bit or to be able to do some shooting on their own, or understand how to do lighting and microphones and basic production tasks. So was that also kind of what you guys saw and decided to kind of follow suit as you were hearing that from your customers?
Well, we've done some production tutorials in the past. I've done tutorials on lighting. Mark and I did a whole DSLR, and it's not that we don't like them. We just found that they literally took 10 times longer than software training. With software, you capture the interface, you talk about it. With hardware production, it's a totally different beast. I mean, you have to shoot just boatloads of B-roll. I mean, really good B-roll. And so you're like, well, I've just said all this stuff. I have one shot to cover it. What, I'm going to just keep that shot on for like 70 seconds? So no, it's always about like doing a production tutorial. I've discovered just takes so much more time and thought and planning, because you're telling a story and you have to have a lot of imagery to support what you're saying. So, and it's not that I'm opposed to it. It's just that, like Mark said, it's got to be a subject that we're we're super passionate about. And that's one of the reasons why we both have a ton of production experience. We can do more, but we found that they just take a tremendous amount of time to produce. So if we could figure out how to do it in a way that, would cut the time, and we might consider it, but we got so much on our plate with just software and plugins and YouTube that it's just kind of sitting over here, like on a shelf right now.
Well, especially if you look at the attention span, there was a great YouTube video of I forget his name now, but he was basically wanted to hire an editor, and he's a big YouTuber, does a ton of stuff, does really top end stuff. And
this guy edits.
What's that?
This guy edits. Isn't it? Wasn't it him?
I'm not sure, but he
hired an editor off of like Fiverr or one of those, right?
Yeah, and he went through, here's all the top reels that I watched and what I liked about him. And he basically would say, like, he's watching something. If something doesn't happen about every 5 to 10 seconds, he's bored. Like, hey, there's been talking for 5 seconds, nothing's happened. There hasn't been a cutaway, there hasn't been a graphic. I'm bored. And like this. That's what I was concerned about, this YouTube video I just put up. It's 37 minutes long, but there's parts of it I had so much to talk about. And if I were really to keep a lot of B-roll in there, I would have to work another month on it. And I mean, that was easily 3 weeks of work, just the writing and collecting the footage. And there's so much more to actually make it denser with information, with more graphics and things like that. I could easily spend days more putting a lot more material in there. That's why I'm amazed at some of these folks. I don't know how they get by. Like this guy, DP Journey, you should check him out if you haven't before, because he did an excellent breakdown of ProRes RAW that's different than what I did, but he had tons of excellent charts and graphs. But it's like, oh, that had to take him, that's the kind of work that we put into our tutorials that we sell that have to be like that. But he's putting the stuff out for free. And it's like, how do you make a living? It's just outstanding. And I just don't, it's too much.
Yeah, I'm curious if what we're seeing too, and maybe you guys have this in your analytics from YouTube. It seems like there are sort of like, there's the really short videos that people are looking for just something really quick. And then there are the deeper dives where people want to kind of dive in and go, 40 minutes with ProRes RAW, or watch Philip Bloom review the new Sony camera for an hour and a half, or like whatever it is. It seems like, there's room on both sides of the spectrum potentially for folks, depending on what their sort of interest or appetite is. Moving on here.
By the way, great question.
Yeah, go for it.
No, these are great questions. They're
good.
Really great.
Good. We've got a few stuff in the chat. I'm glad to see that the chat is also just sort of having some side discussions about, what is a real NLE, what is a real video editing tool, which is fantastic to kind of dispel some of those myths in terms of, just because you don't use one of the three that we had in the poll doesn't mean you're not an editor, you're not making videos because you're not using the right tool. Hopefully, I think a lot of what you guys have done over the years shows, that it's look at what you can do with these tools. This is great. This is democratization of the technology. So want to start to kind of cast our minds towards the future a little bit with our last sort of like 10 minutes or so here before we start to wrap things up. And just wanted to pick your brain, since you guys have been steeped in this for, since, Final Cut 1 and going back to the early days of NABs and all those industry meetings. Where do you see the future for sort of professionals in our industry as, video makers, whether we're focusing on the production side or the editing side? Where do you see this all continuing to evolve and go over the next, 5-10 years?
We have to think about that. Well, we're seeing, one thing that we're seeing right now, especially in news media, is we're seeing a shift to a lot of independent channels, independent news gatherers and news shows, independent entertainment channels, and honestly, it's kind of interesting to watch. Corporate media is kind of imploding right now, to be honest with you. It's just like, they don't know what to do. They're freaking. This is what I'm seeing. And I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity for us creators and storytellers in these smaller space, and finding these little niches where we become kind of either subject matter experts, or we work with, here's an example. I work with a guy at Disney, and he started a company called the Space Channel. He's like, all he wants to do is cover stuff with NASA and outer space, and what's his name, Elon Musk, and all anything to do with space. And he's going to create an entire series of YouTube shows based around that. He's focused on it, and no network would give him any money for that per se. He's just he's bootstrapping it, and I see that's where I see a lot of things moving, and kind of like the small footprint, film crews and small production companies producing stuff that looks like it was produced by, network television. Now there was a time where there was a difference between, network quality and, YouTube. Now it's all the same. We're all shooting with the same cameras now. I mean, we got YouTubers that are shooting with, red cameras, and, it's just amazing. So there's kind of a great democratization of tools. And there's now a democratization of how we can now interact with our audience directly now. We don't, anyway, I'm kind of rambling on this a little bit, but I see a ton of opportunity, but I see a huge seismic shift away from corporations running, having literally gatekeepers for media. I mean, we're seeing it crumble. You may not agree with me, but I see it crumbling.
Yep. I think we're definitely seeing a lot of the same, and opportunity for folks in our industry that can help people tell their story, get their message out, all that kind of stuff. So that's fantastic. Yeah. Looks like Mark may not be handy at the moment, but if you can both jump in, sort of what are the new tools or techniques or technologies that you guys are most excited about, that are the new things that have come across your radar that you just can't get enough of right now?
Well, one of the things I want to dip my toe into is augmented reality. I think that's going to be something we're going to see a lot of. I know, this is something that Apple's been working on a lot. We don't know anything about what they're going to be showing, but, the idea of augmented reality apps in the future, and being able to integrate augmented reality. And, we're still kind of, again, the beginnings of that, but I think that's an area that I'm kind of excited about, actually. What we can do with our phones, and, putting things in space, and, it's just, this one area I want to spend more time researching, but I see I see the future as that, so that's one of the things I'm excited about. The other thing is that I see future-wise is, and Frame.io is working on this, and it's the idea of production in the cloud, where you're shooting and your stuff goes right up to the cloud, metadata's up there. It just completely bypasses the DIT cart and all of the stuff that happens, right there on set, and just goes straight to the cloud with all the metadata, with LUTs applied, and it's the idea of using the cloud as kind of a repository for your dailies, and your things go up to the cloud, and you're working off the cloud. I see that as also something that's coming big time in the next 5 to 10 years.
No, fantastic. I think there's a lot in that space that's going to be Interesting. I signed up for the beta of Camera to Cloud. We have one of those old Teradek cubes at work and a Sony FS7, and as soon as they turn that on, we're going to start trying it out and see how it goes. So I'm with you there for sure. I think probably a last question from me, and then we'll start to kind of transition to wrap up. And also, if you could have, I want to give you a chance to reiterate that discount code for folks and sort of what the details are around that. So have that handy, sure. Steve, if you would. But just sort of one last kind of big picture question: where do you see the future of training in this industry going? Where's the puck going that you guys are trying to skate to?
That's really an interesting question. I think there's always going to be a need for quality training. There's always going to be something that people need in terms of bringing their skill levels to a certain plateau. What's interesting, all the what I call the app world. With apps, I mean, you don't need any training, and they're pretty. They work the way they work, and you can do things. I look at a software like DaVinci Resolve, and it's very it's complicated in a lot of ways. So. And it requires explaining. So I don't see training necessarily going away, unless, no, I just don't see it. I see more training actually coming down the pike. I mean, because I'm still absorbing all this new technology, and you know what, I see it as growth for us. I don't see in terms of a company, I remember Lynda.com back in the day, and now they're purchased by LinkedIn. I don't see myself becoming one of those. I mean, I like my job, but I still want to do other things. I want to spend time with my grandkids. I want to go scuba dive on it. So I don't have this grand scheme to like take over the training world. That's not what I want to do. I mean, someone else could do that, but I see myself busy for, certainly the next 10 years doing this stuff. So yeah.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mark. Hope you're still with us, at least listening in. So let's start to go to wrap up, Jane, and get ready for your final comments. But Steve, if you would, please give us that code again one more time and let us know sort of what the details are around that, who that's valid for at any time frames.
I'm gonna share my screen if you don't mind. And do you see it right there?
Yeah, we should be seeing that.
Yeah.
Cool. And valid for just the folks in this meeting.
Yeah. So this is
our newsletter. How do you want to?
You can actually share it. You could use your entire newsletter if you want. Okay. So let me just be clear. So basically, this code San Diego -30, you can use. Let me go to our website here. You could use those on any of our Final Cut, Motion, or DaVinci Resolve tutorials, with one exception. The exceptions are bundles, which are already like 30% off. So if you try to buy like a bundle that includes like 3 or more, the code won't work. But any single tutorial, that code will work for either on DaVinci Resolve, Motion, or Final Cut. It'll also work for our plugins. So we talked about this earlier, that we have these plugins that Mark and I use all the time, and you can also use that code for any of these plugins on our site as well. So yeah, plugins, tutorials, and then excluding bundles or tutorials that are currently on sale. So hopefully that answered it for you.
Fantastic. That's great. Any expiration date on that we should include?
No, I'm not going to put an expiration date on it. I think I'll just leave it open-ended. And, if someday you put it in, doesn't work, just email us and say, hey, I got this code, we'll still honor it. I don't see any need for it. Let people know that that's available. They can avail themselves to that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. That's a great resource for our folks. And thank you for your time, both you, Steve, and Mark, for joining us this evening. Great information. Always a pleasure chatting with you guys. So with that, I think I will bring in Jane here to wrap us up.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Steve. Tom, did you have any final remarks before I sign us on out of here?
I'm just, you guys are a big deal, okay? And the fact that I sent an email to you through support and you came back and we're here today, I really, really want to thank you.
Well, good. It just means we monitor our support.
That's a good thing. Some companies don't.
No, it's great, and it feels real good. It feels real good. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks. And before I go, can I just say that I like Zoom, and I was telling you this, Tom, but I'd much rather do this in person. So like afterwards, we can like go have a beer or whatever. And so if it wasn't for the COVID, it's only a 6-hour drive. My family is in Los Angeles, so I'd make a point to do an in-person user group at some time when everybody feels safe to meet. Because I prefer face-to-face than Zoom. I mean, this is great, but there's something about being in the same room.
And this group drinks beer. Okay.
Got the coasters and everything.
We've given out coasters, okay, as part of our swag.
Yeah, well, that'd be great. So
that's very true. Well, and Steve, we would love to take you up on that when we can start meeting again in person. We're now on 13 months of these remote meetings, I think, and we're ready to go back to in person too, just as soon as it's safe to do so. So thank you for that offer. That would be a great event for us to have you and possibly Mark join us more locally and in person. So I thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mark, for a really enlightening discussion. I really learned a lot. So thank you for that. And for making it so much fun too. Who knew training plugins could be so interesting? And I don't know about anyone else, but I kind of really enjoyed the walk down memory lane too, to a bunch of technologies that many of us have had a chance to live through and live with.
Are you guys, is it going to be available on YouTube for your group, or is it going to be private, or?
It will be available on YouTube. We've been streaming live, and it'll be posted permanently on the SD Media Pros YouTube channel. So
might be interesting. The reason I find it interesting is, I could see myself directing some of our customers, because I've never really told my story in a formal way before. I have these slides, but not in a kind of a structured way, and like told our company. So there'd be a few people might be interested in it, just for that. And the questions were very, very good. They listed a lot of cool stuff. So yeah.
It'll be a link to it right on the homepage.
Very good. Yes, Steve, we'll make sure that you've got that direct link so that you can please direct people to our website. We love it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, lovely people. And thanks for having me on. And I'm sure we'll be in touch in the future.
Absolutely. Just a couple of reminders as we wrap up. Wednesday, April 7th, we've got the event with Sony. Wednesday, April 28th is our next meeting with Scott Valentine, talking about the good old days of family ties and also his new streaming platform. Resources from tonight's meeting are always on our website at sdmediapros.org. Any links or mentions tonight and from all of our meetings are on our website. And I think my greatest message tonight is thank you for being part of SD Media Pros. We really appreciate having you here with us. We're running a special on membership. It's only $50 a year for new members or renewals that are made by June 30th, 2021. So if you're not currently a member, join us. And we will see you again next month. Thank you very, very much on behalf of me and the board of directors. And we'll see you next month. We'll see you on April 7th. And then we'll see you again on April 28th. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night, all.
Bye.
Do you need one of us to stop the stream?
Yeah,
from this point?
I think my computer basically got locked out.
Yeah, let me see what we can
frankly,
do.
nothing I click on works.
Yeah, because you're listed as a host still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm going to do a Finder refresh and see what happens. So everything might go away. No, I can't even do that.
Oh, now
so the only way for me to end anything on my entire system is a hard
quit. Okay.
A hard quit. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't stop the recording or the stream.
It just says leave for me. It doesn't say end meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be fine.
Right.
YouTube will do its thing at the end because it won't see anything, and my recording. We'll see what happens with that.
All right. All right.
All right. All right, good seeing you. That was good. That was really fun.
Excellent job, guys.
Like a real intimate get to know you. That was really nice.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you good get bringing them in, Tom. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys. Here goes the hard crunch.
Yeah, goodbye.
Okay, good night. Good night. Yep.